Happy Valentine's Day, dear viewers! Last year I gave a brief summary about Green Arrow and Black Canary's relationship. This year, well, you've clicked on the title of the video, you know what's coming. To start off this video, I would like to begin with a statement. I hate romantic subplots. And half of you just clicked off the video. For those of you who stayed on, I did not say that I hated romance. I hate romantic subplots. To understand about romantic subplots better, there's a video in the description by Red of Overly Sarcastic Productions. But for the sake of this video, I'll give a brief outline. A romantic subplot happens when the writer decides to pair up two characters in a relationship. It's called a subplot when such a relationship takes place in the backdrop of an existing narrative. The foundation of such relationships may use one of the common romantic subplot tropes like the 5-second stare, the accidental hand touch, or my personal favorite, exchanged a line of dialogue. However, sometimes these tropes can be used to build something solid, which brings us to the topic of this video. Now, something that may surprise a lot of you is that for all the talk of the Vision and Wanda's romantic history, the actual relationship was not really around for that long. It started around 1970 and ended around 1989. However, the characters have been inexplicably been linked to one another for decades after the fact, to the point where we have a show based on these characters in 2021. So, let's talk about the characters in question. First appearing in Avengers 57, the Vision was created by Ultron to be a tool with which he could fight the Avengers. For the sake of not running too long, I'll skip over most of the details of the Vision's creation except for one. Ultron used the brainwaves of the then deceased hero Wonder Man for his synthesoid. Remember this, it'll be important for later. The Vision, however, rebels against Ultron and decides to help the Avengers. After this incident, the Avengers welcome the Vision into their ranks. The Vision is overwhelmed by the hero's acceptance, leading to one of the most memorable scenes in comic book history. Now that we've established one of our pair, let's talk about Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. I'll try my best to summarize. The Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, and her brother, Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver, were both recruited into Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants for about 5 minutes. And also this was before they knew that they were children of Magneto, which they would later on turn out not to be. I am not getting into that right now. They would quit very quickly and apply to become Avengers. Since back in those days all you needed to be an Avenger was a costume and a pulse, they were quickly accepted into the Avengers ranks. Pietro, as you may know, has super speed, but his primary characteristic was, well, being a Wanda, on the other hand, I don't think anyone knew what her powers were. Her role was, to be quite honest, her role was to be the woman of the Avengers. The twins would be Avengers for some time until Pietro randomly decided, due to some contrived coincidences, to join up with Magneto again. And he took Wanda with her, who had no say in the matter, because she was unconscious at the time. This was around the time the Vision joined, so their actual first meeting would be much later, I think around 20 issues after the Vision's debut. Simply put, character development for the Vision. The Vision was slowly becoming the most popular character of the Avengers to the point he was quite literally the face of the team. And the writers really played up the angle of his angst of not being human. One of the best ways to do this would be by putting him in a relationship. And conveniently, there just happened to be a single woman on the same team as him. You see why I keep saying Wanda's role on the team was to be the woman? Still, I can't help but actually liking these two together. Considering the time when these comics were written, it was actually a pretty bold move to pair these two. I mean, I'm sure some of you may have noticed the parallels to a certain fairy tale.
Tale as old as time.
I got that one from Lindsay Ellis's My Monster Boyfriend, which also helped me a little in the making of this video. I highly recommend checking out not only that one, but anything she does as well. She does amazing work. The link's in the description. So is that the only reason? A modern day retelling of Beauty and the Beast? Well, that certainly helped, but no, that's not the only reason. The real reason is that this relationship was, again, very well developed. The writers took great care to maintain the relationship, something that most other romantic subplots fail to do. And eventually the two would get married to great fanfare. Pietro did not show up to the wedding, because again, he is a dick. They would get two miniseries appropriately titled The Vision and the Scarlet Witch, which was about their married life in the suburbs. Yes, WandaVision fans, this is the inspiration for the show. Eventually, Wanda would use her powers to give birth to two boys, Tommy and Billy. Even Pietro stopped being a dick and accepted them. Everything was going great. Well, I guess it started with the resurrection of Wonder Man. And he becomes, well, a really important part of this story, so might as well give a brief history of the dude. Simon Williams was a failed industrialist tricked into embezzling money from his company by his brother Eric. And he would later end up working for Baron Zemo, who would give him ionic superpowers. Unfortunately, those same powers would also kill him if Zemo did not give him the antidote. Simon's mission was to infiltrate the Avengers, but he had a change of heart and betrayed Zemo, dying in the process. Tony Stark, being Tony Stark, would record his brain patterns in the hopes of reviving him. This is either another example of Tony playing God, or, considering what's going on with the X-Men right now in the comics, it makes him extremely pragmatic. He would later be resurrected. No, Tony had nothing to do with it, thankfully, and would eventually come to see the Vision as a brother. So, things are still good, right? Well, the problem began when the Vision went crazy and tried to take over the world's security systems to protect humanity. As you do. Oh boy, considering what's about to happen, the Vision going crazy isn't the worst part of this story. The Vision does get better, but a coalition of security forces from around the world kidnap him, disassemble him, and wipe his memories from, well, both his own databanks as well as from the Avengers files. Hank Pym manages to put him back together, but he no longer has the emotions attached to the memories Hank tried to put in him, as Wonder Man's recorded brain patterns were deleted as well. But that's okay, right? Vision is Simon's brother, he said so himself. All he has to do is let his brain patterns be copied and the Vision goes back to normal. Right? 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 As it turns out, Simon didn't want to have his brain patterns recorded for the Vision. He tells Wanda he did it because he felt violated, but in reality, he was in love with Wanda and he refused to have his brain patterns recorded because he felt, since the Vision was based on his brain patterns, Wanda actually loved him. So as you can see, he refused to help his teammate become whole again because he was in love with his teammate's wife. He essentially ended their relationship. Don't worry, things only get worse from here. Remember Wanda's twins? Turns out they were fragments of the demon Mephisto, who promptly reabsorbs them into himself. So, in a span of a few days, Wanda loses her husband and her children. She goes into a catatonic state for a while. Honestly, who could blame her? And then goes on a crazed rampage. Again, I don't really blame her for that. During this time, she actually ends up sexually assaulting Wonder Man, which, look, Simon didn't do the right thing, but he certainly did not deserve that at all. She does eventually recover, and Agatha Harkness, her mentor, makes her forget her memories of her children so that she can recover. The Vision and Wanda don't reconcile, but remain on friendly terms. Eventually, the Vision's emotions are restored, no thanks to Simon, and then Wanda and Simon date for a while. Yes, that actually happened. The Vision was hurt, but managed to accept it, and he eventually dated other people for a bit, including Carol Danvers. So, everything is still okay, right? Okay, I actually like parts of this story. The concept of a team that was strong enough to handle all external threats being brought down by one of its own members is quite powerful, and the memorial scene at the end was also quite beautiful. But the reasoning given for the team to disassemble wasn't great. It involves, as you may have guessed, Wanda's mental state. I've outlined my thoughts on Avengers Disassembled in a separate video, so I'll focus on Wanda here. What basically happens here is Wanda remembers her children due to a slip up from the Wasp, and it drives her insane. In her insanity, she ends up hurting and killing several of the Avengers, including the Vision, who gets brutally ripped in half by a possessed, hulked out She-Hulk. And to add insult to injury, the poor guy's remains are sent off to some warehouse where he's promptly forgotten till 2012 when he's finally brought back. There was a second Vision running around, a kind of successor to the first, but he was destroyed around the same time they decided to bring the original back. But we can address that later. So, Wanda is now insane, the Avengers are broken, and the Vision is dead. How does it get worse from here? So, Wanda is under the care of her father, who you may remember, this time in continuity was Magneto. Her powers seem to be growing exponentially, and a bunch of heroes, including the new Avengers, some members of the former Avengers, and the X-Men are trying to decide what to do with her. Well, they don't get a chance to do anything as Pietro ends up trying to help. So, you remember me saying Pietro is a dick multiple times throughout this video. Now you get to see why. Pietro tells Wanda to use her powers to create a reality where everyone is happy. This leads to the House of M, where the world is mutant dominated and most of the non-mutant heroes lead relatively happy lives. Of course, the whole thing unravels pretty quickly thanks to Wolverine, and at the end, Wanda is pissed at her father who tried to kill Pietro for what he did. And then she utters those three deadly words: "No more mutants." In an instant, the Marvel Universe's mutant population drops from millions to around 192. Several mutants die due to their sudden depowering, some killed by mutant haters who could now easily hurt the defenseless former mutants, and some died due to losing their powers. And as for Wanda herself, well, it would seem a now powerless Wanda is now living in some remote village in Europe or someplace. So, let's recap. Wanda has not only killed several Avengers, but she has essentially committed genocide on the mutant race. How does she return from this? So, I guess at some point Marvel wanted to address the issue of the Scarlet Witch and try to redeem her. How do they go about it? By making a comic in which the story could only progress because everyone in it is an idiot. Honestly, I'm not even going to bother with the plot as most of it has no impact. So let's talk about the one thing that did. It's revealed that it was Doctor Doom who was behind everything Wanda did in an attempt to access life force energy. Or something. It honestly really doesn't matter. Oh, and the Wanda that was living in the village was a Doombot. Oh, and that second Vision I mentioned way back when, he dies in this comic. And his teammates choose to not bring him back. God, it's hard being the robot of the team. Wanda is brought back to the Avengers by Carol Danvers, but the Vision stops Wanda from entering the mansion, saying that despite the fact that they were no longer together at the time, and the fact that she had gone insane and he was sympathetic to that plight, he still somehow used him. Out of all the variables available to her, he was the element that not only was hurt by Wanda's actions, but she used him to hurt his teammates. And he essentially says that she has no place among the Avengers. His teammates think he's being harsh, but once again, we can see that an android can cry. And honestly, I think a lot of people will sympathize with the Vision here. Yeah, he's very clearly hurt by the situation, but he just can't forgive Wanda just because he loves her. Eventually, Vision does forgive her, but they don't get back together. She even rekindles her relationship with Wonder Man for a while, but they eventually break it off. However, like I said, these two are strongly connected, and we see those connections come into play very soon. In 2015, Wanda and Vision would each get their own series. The Scarlet Witch's series was about giving her the one thing she lacked for so long: character development that didn't also involve a male character. Vision's series was about him starting a family in the suburbs. As you may have guessed, this does not end well. So, in the Vision miniseries, it's shown that in a bit of a retcon, when Wanda started dating Simon, she ended up giving the Vision a copy of her own brain patterns so that he could find his own happiness someday. Again, as you have clearly guessed, this did not end well. Still, I do recommend both series. They're really good. But I also hate the fact that in Vision's series, they show that the Avengers are scared he might just turn on them at any point, which is just... Well, Wanda and Vision have definitely been compelling as a couple. This is shown in nearly every adaptation where the two are seen together, like Avengers United They Stand and, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But there might be a lesson to be taken away from all this. There's probably a limit to how far you can take a character's action under the guise of them being crazy without assassinating their character. After all, they tried to do that with Wanda. But even in the books themselves, many characters have not forgiven her. She is still considered a pariah by the mutant community who view her as a boogeyman. I have no doubt that the showrunners of WandaVision will try to make her sympathetic, but the balance of writing a character that does terrible things while still remaining likable is clearly not easy. The comics didn't quite succeed. Will the show?